All right, we are on air. Today is Thursday, July 19th, and this is a meeting to check in on active design and usability tasks for Backup CMS. First up, backupcms.org, our website. We have outstanding issues to improve user experience for selecting module themes and layouts, and that hopefully will also help people understand which module themes and layouts are ready for use when deciding to move to Backdrop. We haven't made any progress on those lately. If anyone wants to work on that, it was something we identified in our poll, I think it was over a year ago, that people wanted from Backdrop was that information to be more available, so we know it's important. So it's kind of one of our highest priority items for backdropcms.org. Spending his time, wants to work on it. That's up for grabs. The forum site, forum.backdropcms.org, has one outstanding issue with the code style widget. It just doesn't work really well. Wes, I know I saw you had some CSS that hacked it. I have not put that into the theme yet. I'll try and get that done hopefully today, just so we can get a sort of little improvement on our site. But we did mention it would probably be good to get something better upstream into CK Editor that made it use JavaScript to detect how wide it needed to be, and then it would always be the correct length, so we wouldn't need to worry about adjusting the CSS based on the content within the box. But this will fix, we'll do it for now. And I still have a tab open somewhere with that code in it that you sent me, Wes, so I'll get it up. And then let's see, other things in Backdrop CMS itself. We have one issue about the installer design, which I think we've reached a consensus on what we want to do to move forward on that, but we need someone to actually build it. That issue is number 2873, and we've got some screenshots in there of what it would look like if we changed the way the installer table rendered. We just need to be careful that when we implement it, that'll also change, I think, the status report. There's a couple of other places that use the same theme function, so we need to make sure that we're not breaking things in two places or making them both better when we implement it. Then we have a ton of user experience issues. Our first and oldest is issue number 37, which we might also talk about in the developer meeting. I haven't read up on that recently, but the last time I read the comments, we reached a consensus and decided what to move forward on, and then we got a rerolled pull request that didn't match the consensus, and so we sort of reopened the discussion as to whether we want to move forward with the current pull request or if we want to go back to the thing we all agreed on. And I think what might be smart is if we developed multiple pull requests at the same time, so that we can at least merge one and then we can rebase the other one, and so that way we still have progress being made, even if it's not the complete, everything everyone wants, we at least start to move forward. So I'll take a look at that and see where we are on that one. But I think the most recent pull request is actually really great. We just need to kind of separate it out into three so that we can decide what needs to be merged in what order based on how people are feeling. The next one we have is some issues around adding save as draft functionality to core. So we have one issue that changes the name of the buttons. So when you click the button on the node form, it doesn't just say save, but it will say save as draft or save and publish or save and schedule or schedule for later or something like that. So people know what's going to happen when they hit the button. And then the other issue is some cleanup on the radio buttons so that we just move the description text around. And that will also require some CSS work because the way our description text works right now, there's no indentation on it. And so it always lines up with the left side of the form element. And I think in most cases for text areas and text fields, that's fine. But for radios, you want the description text to line up with the label, not with the button. And so we just need to do a little cleanup there on what that'll look like so that it's clear where the description text sits. And I think we have, there's a bunch of screenshots in that issue sorry, this is issue number 3122, that kind of show how it is now. And I think we should make kind of a global change to all of core that puts the text in the right place rather than having it just be part of this issue. So that might need to be a follow-up issue. We might be able to get it at the same time. I'm not really sure, but we need to figure out what that should look like. And
this is all over the place. Actually, we have certain elements that have bolded labels and certain do not. And then that indentation thing, when you have a lot of elements in a single page or vertical tab in this case, it's hard to distinguish which elements are going with which help text. And yeah, so indentation, I think, would help.
I think there's also some issue with vertical spacing as well, like the margin, or there's margins around form elements, especially when we get into multiple value things like checkboxes and radios. Sometimes the spacing that looks really great on a single element makes those elements look like they're separate instead of together. So maybe we just need sort of a bigger issue that's like 7-theme form element CSS cleanup, and we can include the description text and the spacing and the bolding and all of that in there too. All right, next up, update dependency messages. So this is when you're installing a new module, and this module depends on another module, or no, not when you're installing one, when you're updating from previous version of Backup or from Drupal, and your contrib module depends on a previous update being run. When you have an error, the message that's displayed to the user isn't very clear exactly what's going on. So this message, this is issue 2858, and it's some cleanup on that message, and we're trying to figure out all of the messages that need to be printed, preferably a minimum of them, but each one needs to be informative and useful. So when someone runs into this problem, which is a little bit obscure, we give them the tools they need to be able to solve the problem. So I think that needs some work, but we're making progress on getting that issue cleaned up. The next one is issue 3141, which will fix the page titles on the manage display subpages, just so you know when you're on a subpage which display you're configuring. So it'll give you both the content type name and the display mode name. That one doesn't have a pull request yet, but I think there's some discussion issue about how to fix it. And the next one, or the next two, are both related to Project Installer. And this, we have some problems around dependency meeting, again, just like we do with updates. And then we have a little bit of a roadblock issue where if you run into a problem installing some things, you're not able to install the things that don't have the problem. And we just need to make sure that we have a path forward for anyone to get into the problem and then get out of it, resolve the problem and get back in and get out again, and not just kind of leave them stuck in the middle. So those issues are 3143 for the dependency messaging, and 3142 for adding the finish without enabling button if there's a module that you can't enable. All right, my new favorite, issue number 3155, is to add a fourth info message type to Backdrop Core. So right now, the messages that print on the page when you complete actions are errors, warnings, or success. But there isn't anything that's just for information. And Gregory, you've done a ton of great work on this issue already. Do you want to give us an update as to where we are right now?
Yeah, so we have concluded that perhaps the best thing is to just underline the links in the messages, which was the last blocker, because the info message text color was the same color as we used for links throughout the rest of the UI. So this made it effectively when there's an info message and that it has a link within it, you cannot tell if that the link is actually a link. So we had a little bit of bike shedding going there as to how we would improve the thing. Should we change colors? Should we bold the links? Should we underline them? And we ended up deciding that the best and simplest thing is to just underline the links. So all I have to do now is file a pull request, which I intend to do right after this meeting.
Great.
Yeah.
So I ported a couple of modules this week, and I got to a point where I was sending a message, and I'm like, oh, I really want this to be an info message, but it wasn't ready yet. So I put like little code comments in there, and I'm like, make this an info message as soon as I can.
Yeah, so I meant to have this finished for like some weeks because I feel the same way ever since I filed this. And actually, it's not filing a new pull request; it's updating, finalizing the pull request that's already there. But I found so many messages in core and some contrib modules that could be info messages. That yeah, I have the same feeling.
So I can't wait. I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
One last little bike shitty thing. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I was actually expecting that.
The contrast of the text might not be good enough.
That we should actually do a check on text contrast for all of our status messages.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure we've ever done that since the new design.
Yeah. So, yeah, AAA isn't too hard to do generally, like unless you're trying to do something beautiful and subtle in the design and you're like okay with just having AA. But if we can get at least close to AAA, if not AAA, that'd be great. So I put the thing on there. I would just decrease the. Actually, I mean that text could be a little darker. I know that blue cones decay faster than the rest of the cones in your eye, so I think blue on blue might need a little extra contrast boost. I asked my optometrist, and he's like, "I don't know if that affects how you can read blue on blue," and so I was disappointed in that. But I do know that they decay first. I would be.
Add a comment in the ticket there, and I will take that into account. And like,
yep, it has the contrast tracker, and you just need to do normal text and try and see if you can get WCAG AAA, but at least do AA.
What does that mean? Wes, would you be able to recommend that like hex code for a color?
No, it's a website, and you just enter in the background color and the text color, and then
it tells you.
And then there's a lightness slider. And then you can just get it into, it'll just automatically go, oh, you're passing, and you go, oh, yes, hooray.
Okay.
Yeah.
You put a link to that website in the issue.
Yep.
Okay, great. So that, again, is issue number 3155. Fantastic. Thanks. I might go steal that website for some of my other projects.
That's the go-to for this kind of thing. It's great.
Okay. The next issue is number 1949, which is a rework of the theme settings preview. And I noticed there's been a ton of discussion going on in there. I know there's also a lot of work going on with theme settings relating to color module. So this, I think, might just be like a bigger picture discussion of how do we get more than just color module previews in there. I don't think there's any work going on this right now, but it looks like if we can get the color previews in, this will come next. It'll be kind of an expansion of what we're already doing there. And then the last issue for usability related stuff is issue number 566, which is something we brought up quite a while ago about how to better handle saving a node form if the form is really, really long, making it easier for people to get to the submit button. So in Drupal 8, they split it into a 2-column layout so that the buttons are on the top on the right-hand side. So if you're on the top of the page, you can, or not on the top, but high enough up, you can get to it pretty easily. We were thinking about sticking them to the bottom of the browser window. So you would always have them sort of floating there until you got to the bottom of the page, and then they would fall into place. And so we have a pull request with that implementation there based on some work people have already been doing on production backdrop sites. And so I would just encourage more people to go and try it and see what you think about this sticky submit buttons. Is this going to improve editorial experience or not? I'm also tempted to put it on some of my production sites and see what the editors think of it. I really like it. I often edit a node, need to change something quickly, and all that scrolling gets in my way.
I could make that a contrib module real quick. It's just adding a little CSS.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah, it might just be faster to throw it into a couple of themes. I mean, if it's a core candidate and it'll be if we like it, it'll be in anyway. It might not be worth going through the whole process of making internship and then moving into core. But yeah, I'm tempted to play with it, see how it goes.
I'm not sure if I filed a separate, like a dedicated issue for that. But when I have ideas, I usually do a mock-up and then I take screenshots and they're on my desktop. So I'm looking now at one of the screenshots for, see how we always, now that you brought this up, we were discussing about the fact that D8 has this notion as the experimental module. And I'm not sure if I've put that mock-up, like the info message thing, going back to that, can be actually used as a sort of like promotional thing at the top of the project browser, saying we're thinking of these 2 or 3 modules. We're thinking of putting them into core for the next version, and please test them out. Help us test them out. So that's another place where the info message thing could play a part. And on another note of that, since we are doing the design meeting, I see that, I don't know if you got, there's this group of 4 tickets in d.org. They have a automatic updates initiative or idea, a project browser initiative, a telemetry initiative, and then there was another one, the 4th, that I couldn't care for that much. I can't remember which one it was now. But the project browser, what they are, a brief look at the designs, and they're doing pretty much what I think Firefox, if its add-on does. So it has a list of the add-ons, and then at the top they have the promoted ones, sort of like in a form of a slider. And I think it's the same sort of like pattern that the iTunes, the Apple Store uses. So yeah, I think that people are used to seeing promoted things as a part of the, sort of like a header at the top of the list of things or whatever it is. We should do something like that. I'm not sure if, Wes, have you seen the mockups for that?
I haven't seen it. But I'd be curious too.
Of which one?
So there's a few. I'll try to find them, and then maybe I could bring them up because I don't have the links right now. I'll bring them up during the dev meeting if you're around.
Okay.
Or just, yeah, put them in Gitter. There's 4 initiatives that are sort of like grouped together. So the tickets in d.org for them, they have all 4 of them repeating in every ticket. And as I said, one of them was to bring Project Browser into D8 core. And the design for that, or a few of the mockups that I saw, had a big sort of like slider, and it was saying promoted modules or something like that.
Okay.
I think that makes sense, as long as for promoted modules we only have a few, because the problem with sliders is that most people don't ever see anything that comes after, like slide number 2.
It doesn't have to be a slider. It doesn't have to be a slider or anything like that, because it seems like a big change, but
definitely at the top.
Yeah, so something like that. Yeah, I'll put that mockup that I have with the thing into it. Yeah. All right, I'll do that, and we'll have it. Let's discuss for that.
Okay.
But, yeah,
sounds great.
During the dev meeting.
All right, so that is the end of our issues for the usability section. Is there anything? Gregor, do you want to create new issues or a meta issue or something for this particular thing where you can even post the screenshots? That might be good for us to refer to long term.
For which one are you saying?
Just where we can, somewhere where we can put the designs for the module browser that's going into Drupal 8. Because I think we could collaborate a little bit on that. Like if we can find their issue, we could talk about how we did it and our separation of things like installer and updater and all of that. And then, if they have good designs, we could also say, oh yeah, this is obviously better than what we have. We're going to implement some of that too. So just kind of a place to facilitate that discussion about what's going on in Drupal land and how we can. What
we usually do when there's a respective d.org issue is like we put the links and the respective designs in our respective issue. But since we have Project Browser for years now, and the project is, I think that the most fitting issue for that is the issue where we discuss the experimental modules.
Okay.
Because that's what's left actually.
Okay.
So instead of experimental, we'll be calling them promoted or
Yep. Yep.
endorsed,
Fair enough.
something like that. Yeah, featured.
Okay. And then, is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about relating to either design or usability?
Yeah, I have a little one. I already got a PR for. It's 3195. Basically, I was just messing around, testing keyboard navigation, and noticed that in Basis you can tab. Well, it'd be in anything that uses the menu, the collapsible menu from Core, the hamburger menu. You can navigate to the control for the menu when it's not visible, which is not cool. So
Okay.
you should only be able to close the menu when it's a hamburger, or open and close it. So yeah, it's just a little CSS that I'm pretty sure I goofed up when I originally wrote that. I think it was me.
Well, we stole that from Smart Menus, so it could have been something that just
yeah. Well, anyway, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's good to go, but
that sounds almost like a bug.
I called it a bug. Or
Yeah.
Actually, Nate did.
Okay, that's great.
Guys,
You can get it in right now.
Guys, I actually did file a ticket 10 days ago about that promoted modules in Core. It's 3193. If you want to take a quick look at the mockup with the
3193.
Yeah, 3193. So it's the second mockup, and it uses that info thing message that we said. It's a pretty simple thing. But what it does, it also makes certain modules within the list of, the project browser stick out. And it says, yeah, consider for inclusion in future versions of Backdrop. Please help us test it.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a slider, really. It's like even a list of a couple of modules with easy links that maybe, I don't know if we could have respective links in the info message, either scrolling down to these modules or having add to installation queue links within that message, if that's possible.
Okay. Great. Anything else we should talk about? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap this meeting and we will convene again in about half an hour to talk about active development tests for Backdrop. Thanks.